Welcome to the Page Turn podcast. I'm your host, Tori Sharp, a children's graphic novelist and literary agent.
And I'm Sydney Dean, a comics-curious illustrator for clients like Dropout TV's Dimension 20.
We're bringing you into the conversations we wish we'd had before breaking into comics, so that you'll know what to expect when taking your story from script to shelf. Episode 2, Keep Moving Forward, Part 2 of our interview with Audrey Meeker. Making comics gets easier, but motivation remains a challenge. We talk shop about coloring, inking, switching agents, networking, navigating offers of publication, and more. I want to get back to your story and make sure we can cover everything while I have you here.
Sure.
So you mentioned that Rachel Dybel at Macmillan at Feiwel Friends picked up Swing.
Yes.
What was that like when it got picked up, and what was the experience of starting to work on your first book? Did you feel good and confident or scared? Can you tell me more about that experience?
I think I was a good mix of confidence and nervousness because it was like, well, I talked to Andrea Colvin about this.
Oh, she's my editor.
Yeah, it was like a later portfolio review, and she'd probably never remember this. But I was just like, yeah, no, I finished Swing in about like a year and a half, maybe less than. And she's like, that's really fast. And I was like, oh, really? I didn't really think it was that fast. And she's like, no, that's really fast. And I was like, oh, so I was crunching. But the reason I was nervous was because I would be doing graphic novel stuff in concurrence with full-time job stuff. And when I was working at Valiant, it was like, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. You had the weekends. That was going okay for me, but it was definitely probably the worst my mental health was throughout the process. Like, it was not burnout bad enough to get me to stop working, but it was definitely like always there, just fatigue. It didn't quite dampen the excitement. And I made all of my deadlines, and Rachel was very happy with all the stuff that I was doing. But when I got laid off, I had about a month-long, I can't work, I'm depressed, because I lost my full-time job and I no longer have security. That was probably the pivotal point of working on Swing, because that loss of time caused a lot of crunching at the very, very end. I don't remember if this is totally accurate. I had to ink like 39 pages in a week at the very end to make my deadline, which when I started working at Starbucks, it was so much more of a flexible schedule, and it was shorter work days, and I was meeting people, I was making friends, and I also was able to devote more time of my day to taking care of myself in addition to working on book stuff. So overall, I will say my friend Sarah makes fun of me all the time for this because I still haven't really been able to read Swing all the way through yet. Not because of any just like emotional trauma or whatever, because of the production of the book, but really just because I'm so much better now. Like, I had so much rapid growth at the end of Swing that I feel like I'm carrying into Last One Picked. And it's like the gap, where it's like you see the work that you've made and you realize you're so much better now. I'm still very proud of Swing, and I really like the story, and I think that it's incredibly solid, and my grandparents like it, so that's what matters.
Swing is wonderful.
Thank you.
There's so much I want to say to that. You mentioned that while you were working as an editor and working on Swing, and then in the period directly after, it was a lower point in your mental health. And then that afterward, getting into this stable job with Starbucks, shorter hours, more time to work, more human interaction, you were feeling better. Does that affect your art too? Like, do you feel like that affects the quality of your art as you're making it?
I don't know if it necessarily impacted the quality of it, but it definitely made working on it easier. If there's less friction on the wheel, then like the wheel's going to turn easier, I will also give a huge shout out to all my little friends, my little Discord friends, and we would do Discord work sessions together, because the times that I was really struggling, it helped me refocus my energies to just be able to sit and talk with someone as I'm drawing. That was huge for me. I was then making real life friends, and real life friends turned into real life work sessions. I'm a big body doubler.
Sydney and I both talked, my co-host Sydney, who couldn't
Mhm,
make it today, she and I both talked about this exact thing in our
mhm,
interviews, that
mhm,
one of the biggest positive changes in our art was realizing that we didn't have to do our freelance art and comics solo. We could meet
mhm,
up with people, we could hop on Discord chats, and
mhm,
that has made all the difference in making the job easier to emotionally handle, so you're not as isolated all the time. So it's really cool that you've found that too. And
mhm.
how did you find that? Where did you sleuth out these Discord buddies? Are they people from college?
So, okay. In addition to all the random crap that I was doing in college with comics, I also, my junior and senior year, helped create a group called Level Ground Comics, which is a student publishing group by SCAD students for SCAD students non affiliated with SCAD. They have historically been making Kickstarter anthologies, and everyone has been funded so far, which is really exciting to
Wow.
like see your legacy continue forth. Every year, and this is not to diminish the hard work of these students, but every year I'm like, is this the one that's not going to make it? And they keep making it. And it's like $10,000 for their goals. And I'm like,
Cool.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that's so cool. But in working on this hugely collaborative group, because, you know, the people in Level Ground Comics were working as editors and basically gaining editorial experience while these student artists were creating pages with the potential of getting a payout at the end. And when I was in charge of the group, I brought on a couple of people named Jolie Hamada and Nur Shuba. Level Ground Comics had their first anthology, A Taste of Home. Sarah was in that group, and then Level Ground Comics started offering web comics editorial stuff. And I saw that Sarah was doing a web comic, and I was like, Sarah, can I edit your web comic? And she said, yes, please. And so then that's how we became friends. But I would say the majority of my closest friends are people that I met in SCAD. Most of like Jolie and Nur, I only knew them online. We actually had our first meetup this past year by tabling at Staple together in Austin, Texas. And it was so fun. But like Nur is this super cool geoscientist and just decided to get her MFA in illustration online at SCAD for fun.
Didn't
And
there help to run the nib while it was going on?
Nur
Sorry.
didn't run the nib, but she had a comic come out through them.
Oh, okay. That must be what
Yeah.
I'm thinking of.
Nur
All right.
also runs Patchwork Comics, which I'm also a part
Yes.
of.
Yes. Cool.
I love every time that they put out a new issue. I can't do it anymore, unfortunately, because of all my professional work. But I loved the nib RAP. Basically, if you go to college, make friends. And then you'll keep the darkness at bay when you giggle about making comics together.
So true. Yeah, thank you for sharing. I had a period of time where I was working on my first book, Just Pretend, where I didn't really have an online group of artists, and it was 2020 while I was working on that
Mm,
book. So
rough.
I had some D&D friends I would hang out with sometimes, but it was kind of on and off.
Mhm,
And I was hearing about other artists having these Discord calls and Discord groups, and kind of looking longingly from a distance and not being
mhm,
quite sure how everybody was meeting each other and becoming friends. So
mhm.
since then, I've found those communities, but at the time, I had no idea where everybody was grouping up like this. It sounds like some of them were also from your cafe job, too.
Yeah, it's so funny because like none of them are artists, but like one is they're all also still college kiddos. because I work with a lot of college students, but one's a psychology major and one's a physical therapist, and she's probably gonna go to Duke or Belmont for her master's program, and like one is a PhD in political science, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I draw comics. It's so interesting. But they are also just like, I don't understand how you do this. This is so cool. It's really funny to like be appreciated from people who know that they can't do what you do. And it's the same way that I appreciate them. Like, hey, I'm not getting my PhD in political science. Like, that's just not me. Peace and love to my friend Alma, though. Like, she rocks it.
Yeah, it's like comics seem so magical to other people, but they're the most normal thing in the world to us. And then all the stuff that they do seems arcane and mysterious.
Yes. And it's just like, how is your brain so big? And they're like, how is yours so big? And I'm like, and then I start buffering. Anyways.
Back to swing. Was the process about what you expected, or did it feel different than you anticipated?
The process was about what I expected. I knew it was going to be a long haul. My one saving grace was having a colorist, because if I had to color my book, I would have been cooked. It would have been horrific. And also, Sarah is so fast and so good. It was really nice to be able to just trust someone with that and just move on with my life.
I had a colorist too. When you said that the book took you about 18 months, did that include coloring, or was that getting through inks?
That included coloring.
No, that was my first schedule too. I knew it was fast going in. I didn't ask for more time. And I also did end up having a colorist. It was a little bit of an interesting experience with my colorist, though. I'm so glad that you got one that you can trust. When Just Pretend was colored, my publisher hired a studio to do it, and you could tell that there were like 12 different artists working on it, all with different visions. I could tell there was like one artist from the studio who was really good, who had a palette that I loved, but that artist did maybe 5 to 10% of the book. And there was a crazy week right before the drop dead date for the book where I recolored the entire thing, except for that one artist pages.
Oh,
Those were
wow.
good. But it was easy because it was flatted and shaded. Like, I didn't have to redo most of that. I redid a lot of the like magical effects from the fantasy scenes inside the book of like the story that the character's writing, and that was more involved. But for the most part, it was like opening every page and then like color dropping the palette that I wanted onto the flat layers. It was always like 1,000 layers though. Like every single shape on a different layer. Yeah, it was a mess, but I loved it. Like I'm glad I don't have to color my books, but I love coloring. So like I didn't mind going in and doing so much revision on it. Like it was like wake up, color all day until I dropped to sleep at night for, a week and a half, and it felt like this little like intensive. So I had like I wasn't mad about it really. Like I think I had a good attitude about it and enjoyed it, but it can go either way with a colorist.
Yeah.
But it still saved a lot of time to have it flatted and everything.
Yeah. I'm really interested to see how my third book is going to go, because the color palette is going to be green, because green is the best color, or for me it's the best color at least. But I am basically going to be working in a limited color palette, but I discussed with the designer of my book, and I'm basically just going to be working in grayscale, and then we're going to find a Pantone and then color drop different shades of that on top, so it's just easy peasy. So the trick is going to be finding the correct shade of green. But I think that with all of our forces combined, it'll be fine. But it'll be interesting to see, because that's going to be a new addition to my process of adding value, because I've never done that for my professional works.
Can you explain what a Pantone is for listeners who might not know?
A Pantone, to my understanding, is a swatch of color. If you've seen like a color card, it's like the official color. It has like a code that's associated with it. And a lot of companies use these quote unquote official colors, and they like license them and use them, and they're really good for production stuff. Like, what am I trying to think of? It's like the
branding,
color.
it like
Yes.
unifies.
Branding. Yes.
I worked in marketing. We would get like the branding Bible, which had the exact color you have to use whenever you make advertisements in affiliation with the company. And when we talk about Pantones for books, it's often a color that's not in the typical CMYK print colors. So the printer will essentially use a different ink to get that Pantone. So it can be an extra cost to do that sometimes. I mean, you're not using the full range of colors, so it really depends. But for instance, on the cover of my recent book, Stand Up, they wanted like a vivid purple, and purple is really hard to print in CMYK. So they chose a Pantone, and then the ink that we printed with for the cover is not possible to get with typical CMYK. They use like a special ink.
Interesting.
Yeah, a lot of the time when we talk about Pantones for interiors too, you just pick like one because it's like a special ink doing the whole book. And just that Pantone in various shades can make it super unified. You make sure it's all going to be exactly the same color and very cohesive. And it can also make it feel like something you don't see in other books because it's like outside of the typical print range. So that's awesome. Before we get too far away from the chronological journey that you took, we've gone through college, we've gone through swing. What was it like starting to work on your second book?
Book 2 is actually what I used to get my new literary agent.
Oh, you switched agents. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah, so Melanie and I decided to amicably split ways because she didn't want to work in comics anymore. To that, I say very fair. She just wanted to focus exclusively on prose, and she didn't feel as though she was like suiting my needs, which was like, okay, that's actually very kind of you to think of me in that way. We split. My friend Sarah, again, she is represented by Jess Malio from Inkwell. Jess apparently was a dream to work with, and I was like, wow, Sarah, could you put in a word of recommendation for me while I query her? Because I need an agent. Sarah was like, yeah, absolutely, I can do that. And it was the sweetest thing ever. When I emailed Rachel that Melly and I were no longer working together, she actually emailed me a list of like 3 literary agents and was like, Audrey, here's some names of people I was thinking of. If you want, I can put in a good word for you and connect you guys so that you can talk about your books and stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so sweet.
I always think it's a sign of such a good editor if they want their writers and artists to be working with an agent, and just make sure your interests are protected.
Yeah, and it was just like, oh my gosh, she cares about me. OMG, blushing.
Yeah.
Basically, she gave me the list of like 3 or so agents, but I asked her, hey, have you ever worked with Jess? And she was like, yes, Jess is amazing. I'll send a little email note to her now. Again, another vote of confidence, which was really great. I connect with Jess and I tell her about Last One Picked and Grounds. And she really liked both. And then I had this third idea called Tupper's Creek, which she also really, really loved, but I didn't really have the work behind it to work on pitching it.
It was more of an idea, not like a full proposal yet.
Yeah. And it's also one of those stories where I think I need to continue to get better before I can tell it. Not that it's going to be super intensive. It's just going to be a different genre than what I've worked in before.
That's exactly what I figured you meant. Yeah. There's like different skills it takes to know how to draw different genres.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jess decided to thankfully take me on. And in our discussions, I unearthed my initial story synopsis for Last One Picked that I don't know what happened. I guess we just never did anything with it. Because then I sent it to Jess and she was like, oh, so this is done. And I was like, oh, great. We did an exclusive submission to Rachel because in my contract for Swing, she got first looks at my next middle grade graphic novel.
So this was your option book?
Yes.
Okay.
Rachel really loved Last One Picked. She related to a lot of the elements of it. So she put in an offer, and Jess and I talked about it, and I was like, you know what? I think this is worthwhile, and this is good, and I really like Rachel. So I went with Rachel for that project. And then for Grounds, Jess sent Grounds out wide. There were a couple of people who are interested in it, but Grounds is very dense. And so a lot of them were just like, we can't take this project on because we don't have the bandwidth for it. And I said, okay. But Rachel really loved it too. And so Feiwel Friends was actually the only offer on the table for that project as well. And I was like, juggling, obviously we want the book to go to auction and we want the editors to be competing with each other and like raising the price and the deals and whatever. Like that's the ideal scenario, but I'm working on 2 books with the same editor so that she understands and knows my production schedule very intimately, which was probably the biggest benefit of this whole endeavor for me.
So you were able to get like a longer production deadline?
Yes, for Grounds, yes. Grounds is going to be like high 200s, low 300s pages long. It's going to be big because it's like a older YA book.
That's actually a great point. I don't think we've said explicitly. Are your first 2 books middle grade or YA?
The first 2 books I would categorize as older middle grade. Like the characters are like 14 in them. Then Grounds is like older YA. The main character is going to be like 19 years old in it.
And I assume that's why you were able to shop it widely instead of it counting as another option book, right? I don't know if you have another option and you don't have to say, but usually if you are pitching a project that is outside of the age category you've worked with previously with an editor, you have the freedom to send it to other editors instead of giving your past editor first look.
Yep, and that's what happened. Because it wasn't in the same target age demographic, we were able to send Grounds out wide.
I absolutely love that you found an editor who loves and understands your voice as a storyteller, and even knowing that without it being an option, even with it being in a different age category, Rachel continued to want to work with you and bring your stories into the world is such a testament to how great of a cartoonist and storyteller you are.
Thanks. I feel very lucky too. I'm going to be very busy for the next couple of years, but I think that I have a very good team of people backing me up. And like my publishing squad is one thing, like I also have my real in-life support system as well. So, I don't know. It's nice. It's nice when people care about you or whatever. I don't know. Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the improvement that you felt? Because you said going from Swing to Last One Picked, you felt like you had so much growth. And I know it can be really hard to like dig down into how to describe artistic growth, but are there any techniques you might be able to like convey to listeners that could help them too?
Well, techniques have more or less remained the same, but I think the biggest ways that I've improved, and it's very easy for me to diagnose this, I'm faster. I am better at my shot calls, so my visual storytelling is more interesting, and my panel layouts are more interesting. For Swing, I very much so relied upon the standard grid, box, square kind of vibe, because I'm like, it's for kids, you know, you want to make sure that the storytelling is clear, you don't want to get too fancy with it. And Last One Picked, there's a larger variation in panel sizes and just storytelling in that way. Like I have so many pages that I'm just like so excited to do because I'm so pleased visually with how the layout of the panels look.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah. So it's like, I think those are the 3 biggest things: speed, shot calls, panel layouts.
Recently, I was watching some YouTube videos about inking fundamentals because I've been doing this job for a long time now. And I was wondering if there was anything really fundamental that has kind of slipped. And so I was watching very basic like inking 101 videos. And something that came up really early on was to ink fast, like to make each stroke pretty quick because it makes the lines cleaner and swoopier and you have more control. And I realized that when I've been inking digitally, I keep trying to make really slow, steady lines because I'm frustrated about the wobble. It just was such a groundbreaking, like tiny little detail where I was like, I worked caricature, right? They taught us with inking the caricature drawings that it's like you're swooping the line over the spot where you want to draw, and then when you actually make the mark, it's like landing a plane. Like you're already in motion, you've already mimed the way that you want the line to go, because in that case you get one shot at it and it's permanent. And I'd kind of lost sense of that working digitally because I can just press undo as many times as I want. And reminding myself to ink quickly has actually improved the quality of the line work, or just given it this like special touch that I had like dulled a little bit. So being able to work faster is great in terms of deadlines, but I feel like also getting in the mindset of working quickly as inkers helps the art come out better too.
I
Yeah.
would definitely agree with that. One of the things that I am at least trying for last one picked for swing, I used perspective grids for penciling and inking.
Mhm.
And did that allow for speed? Sure. But I feel like it also lost a lot of charm when it comes to the backgrounds, and the characters felt separate from the backgrounds, at least to my eye. So maybe it's even not technically faster. But for my environments for last one picked, I'm going to pencil with my perspective grids, ink them without it. If it's imperfect and wobbly, it's imperfect and wobbly. It'll match the characters just fine. And if it's right, if it looks right, it's right, even if it's not technically correct by perspective.
Yes.
Because like
Yes, that's awesome.
there's no point in trying, unless it looks really wrong. There's no point in trying to measure heads of characters to go across the perspective line, because sometimes the storytelling is more important. So I am really enjoying how my pages look with this new element of wobbliness to my backgrounds. So I'm interested to see how the entire book is going to look at the end of it. But you kind of have to care a little bit less in order to get the result that you want.
It's more playful.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of it's counterintuitive. You would think that using a perspective grid for your inks would have the like cleanest, best quality, but
Mhm.
all of the panel borders are so straight and uniform that I've found when you have like really straight uniform level lines within the panel all over the place, it blends a little too much with the panel borders. Like it
Mhm.
there's something really special about inking freehand, and I that word still makes me like cringe just because at SCAD
Mhm.
they made fun of it so much.
I remember. Yes, I do.
Yeah, okay. They kept doing that after I graduated, apparently. And I think
Mhm.
they're right too. Like, there's no like pride in being freehand. Whatever works
Mhm.
best is what works best. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think that's a great compromise to have the underdrawing be precise and then to add your own flair in the inking level. So, as we get toward the end of the interview, there's a little bit of a strange question that I want to ask you based on something you said earlier. You mentioned that when you first got to SCAD or first started drawing comics, you realized comics are hard.
Yes.
Do you still feel like comics are hard now that you are a professional working on your third book, deep into this, have a degree in sequential art? Are comics still hard to you?
No. And it's like here's the thing. A caveat. The act of making comics is not hard. Sometimes what's hard is the motivation to make comics. Because there's often times where you are fatigued, you are tired, like when you're in that middle dead zone of a project and you have no like you can't really go back, but you don't want to move forward. Like that is the hard part for me. Thankfully enough, I'm just like so deadline oriented and fearful. Not fear isn't the right word, but I'm just so driven by deadlines that there's no choice but to move forward. But for me, and again, this goes back to like being able to visualize things incredibly easily. Now that my skill has caught up to my vision, I feel like making comics is actually much easier now. Comics, it can just be a battle of will sometimes through the production of it. So, yeah, drawing comics is easy, finishing comics is less easy.
When you said you don't want to go back, but you can't really move forward, can you explain that a little more?
Sure, it's like I think the biggest way I can equate it is to that month period when I couldn't work on Swing because I got laid off. I wanted to draw more than anything, but I just couldn't bring myself to. But I had, at that point in my mind, I had only had like 11 pages inked. To me, that felt momentous because I've been working on this project for probably 6 months at this point, and I'm like, well, I can't go back. Like, I can't give back my advance. There's only the only way you out of this is forward. Comics is a lot of gritting teeth and just buckling down, unfortunately, when the going gets tough. At least it has been in my experience. I had a lot of like rapid life events happen sometime in October. So the 6 weeks previous to that, I basically had to grind out my thumbnails for Last One Picked. And it was an everyday thing. I had to just keep going and keep going until I was done, or else I knew that I wouldn't have the will or strength or energy to do it after this middle October time period when there was a lot of big shifts coming. So it's like when you become adept at making comics, I think that you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Like, you know, it's a math equation that you know the solution to. Like 2 + 2 = 4. In order to finish the comic, you have to draw the comic. It's really just like moving forward through that process, sometimes by any means necessary. And at the end of the day, if it doesn't work, you can always give your advance back. But that's not advice that I would give.
It's helpful to feel like you can, though, right? Because
Yeah.
feeling stuck just adds to the stress. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like being in an apartment and being like, well, breaking your lease really sucks and it's an extra expense, but you can do it. And even just having that knowledge sometimes helps you kind of stick through it. Okay, this is so interesting because it sounds, from most of our interview, like you've developed a really good relationship with comics and that it's joyful and you've made peace with the process and feel really confident at it. And then there's also this element of it being something where you have to grit your teeth and just do it, and sometimes life gets in the way. Do you have any strategies in particular that help you get from gritting teeth to enjoying it more and feeling confident?
Well, at first, it's helpful right now that I really enjoy the projects that I'm working on. So I look forward to working on them. And another thing, to kind of go back to the topic of day jobs, I feel very fortunate that I can work on the projects that I want to work on and my own passion projects because I have a day job. Being able to have that financial freedom allows you to focus on your creative pursuits.
Mentioning financial freedom is huge. That is
Yeah.
something that trips up so many of the graphic novelists that I talk to, and is something that I worry about a lot too. It affects so many aspects of your life if you don't have much control over where you live, or as you get like deeper into adulthood, consider things like building a family, or my version of building a family, which would be buying a second dog, right? Like whatever your goals are in life.
I think it also all comes down to routine. Like, I will say I've been struggling to find routine these past few months. I had a really crazy October with a lot of traveling, and now in November, in addition to the holidays, I also have to deal with some like familial stuff. And I had my book release, and then a week later I had my thumbnails due for Last One Picked, and then before that I was in Savannah for the weekend, and before that I moved. Anyways, like, things will always come up, but it's important to be able to find the time to work on your projects. Like, I anticipate for my first inking deadline in mid-January, I'm going to have to really sit down and devote myself to working on inks just to get through it. Like, right now I'm trying to work ahead so that I don't have to do that massive crush at the very end, because that's never good. And I don't want to injure myself, you know. I just turned 26, and as the years keep going, my body's not going to be able to keep up with something like that. So I would recommend finding routine and drink a lot of coffee, because that's what works for me. And thankfully
I don't disagree, but that is very funny.
Well, hey, work at a coffee shop so you get free coffee all the time within reason. Don't get a heart murmur from drinking caffeine, please. But there are certain things that motivate certain people. Rewards don't work for me because I just go out and get the thing that I want.
Sometimes rewards can backfire if like
Yes.
you just end up depriving yourself of simple joys because
Exactly.
you want to try to get work done, and then if you don't get the work done, it's even worse, and then
Yeah.
that's really demotivating.
Yeah.
But it really works for some people. I have a friend who is a freelance artist who has a whole system of Coca-Cola points. When she finishes tasks, she like counts up different numbers of points for different tasks, and then when she reaches a certain number, she gets a Coca-Cola. It is the best ADHD hack I have ever heard of. And
That's
it really works
so
for her.
funny. One last thing, tangentially, that I think is important as an artist, and I mentioned this like in passing as kind of a joke, is to just take care of your body. because you can't crunch deadlines if you don't have the physical and mental health to do so. I'm lucky that I really enjoy working out and I really like weightlifting and powerlifting. So like that's my way to exercise my body so that when I do comics I can just exercise my brain. But just being able to take care of yourself is just so important, especially in, again, that stage where it's like you can't go back, you have to go forward, and the only thing you can do is rely upon yourself, your mind, and your body to get you from point A to point B. So we don't want any of those aspects given out. No one wants a flat tire.
Thank you for listening to the Page Turn podcast. Your hosts are Tori Sharp and Sydney Dean. You can find out more about this podcast and our guests in the show notes or at torysharp.com/podcast. The theme music is Would You Please Wake Up by Patricia Taxon.
Would you please wake up, my dearest love? No one has told me that I'll be okay yet today. No one has called me a beautiful girl yet today.